Um, I'm gonna transition, and I'm actually gonna surprise probably everybody because I'm not gonna choose a Pennsylvania style enclosure with the Pennsylvania animals. I'll stray away from that for today's episode.
Is it Latoria?
It is, yeah, guilty as charged. Yeah, I've made the made the point known a little bit. I haven't been crazy about it, but like I love the Australian frogs as like my secondary what I would get into either to research or to keep or whatever. And I do actually have bell frogs and White's tree frogs. Um, I am like so fascinated at just trying to create their environment where they would have lived. And I spent a lot of time looking up the Australian Museum and seeing Frog ID, which is their citizen science project. And that's how they're documenting in live time, like real time, how these species are doing. They're the first to document about the bell frogs declining, and they're the first to document about the White's tree frogs sadly declining. So I've tried to model because they have a good GIS and they show you exactly. I mean, this is kind of sketchy, but who's going? You can't take the frog anyway if you go to Australia, so I can kind of
Mm.
reveal this. But um, they have points as to where both of the species interact, where they have been seen, and so I really spent a lot of Christmas break researching that and understanding the climate, understanding the plants. Like I searched Josh's frogs for certain species and I would do like cross referencing. I was going to the carnivorous plant nursery. I haven't gotten any carnivorous plants for their habitat yet, but there are a few that exist in the eastern side of Australia. Um, so currently I have a 125-gallon Australian vivarium with 3 bell frogs and 3 White's tree frogs. The only thing, if I could change that, I'd probably want to have 2 female bell frogs, and that would be it. Like it'd be a closed system after that. So no fish, no like anything else. Just those would be the main species. I think it would be really fun uh, to give them just a bigger tank or a bigger setup. So if I were to do it, Dan said about a 10 by 10. I think I could accomplish what I want with a 10 by 10. I'd probably get Australian tree ferns or some species that are out there that are kind of like a woody species, more like bushes, and allow the frogs to hang out there. Um, some of the tendencies that they have, I would try to create little like water holes. I think they call them like billabongs down there or something.
Hmm.
But I would love to have like 2 of them. And the reason why I say that, I don't have any like research to go off of. I could just go off of my observation for this, but everywhere that I'm aware of that the bell frogs were, the white tree frogs had not been found next to them, and there could be multiple reasons for that. Chytrid wiped out the bell frog population. It's possible they did breed side by side at one point, but like basically, I think they were maybe a few hundred feet apart at the closest that I found in Penrith, but there's also others that they might have been close to as well. Um, but anyway, the reason why I say that is because if there's segregation happening at vernal pools, that's something significant to look at if you're trying to create any size enclosure for the species. Because if they have to meet at the vernal pool, you could cause a lot of problems by having them meet. I can tell you that they get along and they do very well in captivity together. There's no fighting. There's no like domination. It seems that whoever gets the cricket first gets the cricket first. It's a toss up. So it's really good to see in some cases in mixed species tanks, like one species just completely dominates and outcompetes. So it's kind of cool to see this. And they're both tree frogs. So I find it even more fascinating. You might come one morning and they're all up in the bushes. If you did a setup like that, you might come in one morning and they're all down by the water. They would be
I'm really
pers
glad that your whites don't bully them because I was kind of concerned about that when you first mentioned the project. I think that if I were to try and do anything like that with my group of whites, my boys would do okay. My big, huge female granny, I think she would just be way too chaotic and she would just be bothering them, biting at them and stuff just way too much. But I love the idea of doing biotope tanks. I would love to at some point kind of transition my stuff to have actual like plants and stuff from the native ranges of my different species.
I think Max must be a blessing because she'll go up and she'll sleep, and the bell frogs will sleep with her. Like it's nuts. So she's this big dominant tree frog, like the males. They understand that they can only come so close, and she might snap at them. She doesn't do that to the bell frogs. The bell frogs will sit with her, like Claris, who's the dominant bell frog currently. He actually got on top of her and was like standing on her, but she's never snapped at them. And like I go out there, it's currently the biggest tank right now that I have, and it's finished. So it's a really fun tank to enjoy. I actually have a security cam hooked up to it. Um, I don't. I could. I'm such like a technical guy though. I could probably spend the whole podcast talking about the specs of it. So I'm gonna like limit how much more I talk about this. But I hope you could see like there's a lot of research I've done on this. There's a lot of like passion and interest I have to like want to make the habitat perfect for both of them. Because I think we get into these situations and somebody could say, oh, I want to make the best whatever habitat. If you're going to have like multiple species, if you don't love both of them equally, or if you're not really passionate about both of them, then one species is going to die or it's not going to do as well, and you're going to see that clearly. So that's why I was just saying about like the vernal pools, for example, and like different things, just talking about characteristics and understanding like how to make them succeed. But I don't, like I said, I don't want to draw it out. The only thing I would
I think
say,
that honestly, doing an episode or something where you talk about your technical systems for your cameras and all that stuff would be not a bad idea, because I see folks all the time asking about how do you set that kind of thing up, like online and stuff, and having like a talked through guide would be something I think people would like.
yeah, you know, I think we made mention of this guy earlier, but for like VivTech, uh a lot of what he's trying to accomplish is something that I'd been like doing a lot of research on before he started. I'm not making products or anything, but I'm just saying that idea of like self automation or full automation, I think is what's going to be huge, and it's going to take over the hobby at some point. Because if Dan doesn't have to go and shut the lights off, or he doesn't have to worry about the misting system for like a week or two, instead of hand spraying, that's just so nice. And I pulled it out even further than that, and like self-automating the room with like air purifiers and vacuums and stuff, like really detailed. um, a lot of people don't think about that, but even the care you're putting into the room outside of the enclosure, like air quality and dust and stuff like that, gets into the tank, that affects them. And so thankfully I have been able to do all of that stuff, and I think it's made a difference to the quality of life the animals have. But getting back real quick to just finishing off my last point, and then we'll transition here. Uh, I think it's important to talk about this. So, if you were to, try and recreate what I'm doing with an Australian tank, it'd be easy to find Australian plants. But, excuse me, the reason why I went with just like Josh's frogs, or just um, even lows, and not trying to get them imported, was because, especially like the wetland plants, you don't know if they have chytrid on them, because you don't know what was sitting in the ponds or in the pools where those plants were taken out of and shipped to you. And the bell frog specifically is super vulnerable to chytrid. So if somebody were listening to this, they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to go on, and buy a bunch of plants that I find on this website," you could actually kill your frogs, because I don't know that they check for that when they send you a plant. They don't intend for people, I think, to put this stuff in aquariums. Like, and I'm not talking about like Josh's frogs or whatever. I'm talking about like searching garden centers in Australia for, like, I was really locked in. And so for people that are kind of thinking about that they want to nerd out for a night and just like search all of these plants, like that's just a concern I would have, and why I opted out of doing that. But
So they don't have such strict export restrictions as they do with animals with plants then?
certain
And
plant
would you,
species, good.
sorry, would you not be able to just like bleach dip the plants to deal with that? Like not every species would be able to tolerate that, but
Yeah. I mean, that would be the big thing for a wetland plant over there. I think I'd have to do the research to figure out like how to treat for it, like for whatever, but I would just be concerned. It would just be a lot more work than it's needed to be. Again, there's a plug, harmless plug for Josh's frogs, and for a few others. Like if you want to get Australian plants, like a good captive place where you know that they don't have diseases and stuff. That's why I got them from Josh's.